Some things are difficult for people to hear, and some things are even more difficult for people to understand. Now, in this video, we're going to take a look at some of these posts that seem to be the words of what we believe is Bryan Kohberger. And even though this guy has not been convicted, so as we speak right now, he is innocent until proven guilty. If these are indeed his words, the question has to be asked, is what we're reading the making of a monster? Was Bryan a ticking time bomb? And was there a little bit more to this very, very complex situation than simply a guy who one day decided to exact a horrific crime upon people he was jealous of or who had shunned him? He wanted them to pay for something that he couldn't handle. It's easier for people to label things simply, like to call someone a monster. And the world has, for far too long, struggled with the complexities of things like mental health. And I already hear you saying, how do you know that? How do you know that, Harsh? And I'll tell you a little bit. For those of you who have been around the channel for a longer time, you will know. And for those of you who haven't been around that long, you won't. But my mum suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. And this triggered one day. Obviously, I was young when this happened, this specific day. This was the first year of my secondary school education. And it was the first day of the summer holidays. She would wake up and she would say that me and my brother, who was 6 years younger than me, would have to eat bread soldiers, and we had to eat a specific amount. And she would talk about God and Jesus. And this is coming from someone who wasn't a religious person. We weren't a religious family in the sense that we didn't go to church. We've been christened, but we didn't go to church. We would then venture into town. We'd walk into town. Despite having a vehicle, we would be told that we had to walk to town. She would proceed to go into a shop. It was a bicycle shop. And she would proceed to punch the person who worked in the shop. And later on in this situation, she would try to take her own life. And what proceeded after that would be years and years of us watching the so-called specialists fumble about trying to figure out how to deal with a situation that they clearly had no idea what they were dealing with. 9 times out of 10, the conversations, communications, interactions that she had with the specialists would leave her even further frustrated and upset and angered. It just proved that reading things from a textbook weren't the way forward. And when she did eventually take her own life, it would come not 48 hours after her final interaction with the so-called specialists. So-called specialists that amongst that conversation that they had with her would tell her that she needed to sort it out. Stop being silly. Get a hold of yourself. And that's how the mental health specialists handle mental health here in the UK. A doctor that when they are approached, they take a month to address the details in that letter that are a plea for help. And then when that help finally comes, 48 hours later, a life is extinguished. So that's my experience, and that is just scratching the surface. But before we look at what Bryan himself said in his own words, I'll say two things. The first being that when I read this was reminiscent of the film Seven, in which Kevin Spacey plays the serial killer. Can you remember? And they find the books, and it's him speaking about his interactions with people. And I got that vibe, that scary vibe of someone who had something very, very wrong inside, and they were trying to come to terms with it. And secondly, this isn't about giving Bryan an excuse. I can hear people now, oh, this is the free Bryan Kohberger channel. It's not. This is the channel that talks about everything, even the difficult things, even the things that are hard to swallow, the unpalatable. Because just because people don't like the unpalatable, it doesn't mean the unpalatable doesn't exist. And sometimes what you think and want to label as a simple situation comes with complexities that we as a world truly do not understand. And we now have to work out not just whether someone did this and whether this person did it, but why they did it. And could anything be done to prevent it happening again in the future? So let's have a quick look at Bryan's words. I have had this horrible depersonalization go on in my life for almost 2 years. I often find myself making simple human interactions, but it is as if I am playing a role-playing game such as Oblivion. I can see what is going on, I am slightly into it, but I can't pause the game and focus on my real life. In this case, my life is an organic sack of meat with no self-worth. As I am starting to view everyone as this, everything I have ever done makes no sense. How did things get this way? How am I wearing this shirt, and who decided that humans shall wear shirts like this? Are we all just advanced animals with possession? Or is there more? More that I can't see? I can't connect. I view everything as I would if I was playing Oblivion. Pointless and full of nothing. Out of reality. I'm moving out of my house. My last holidays were already lived. But where was I? As my family group hugs and celebrates, I am stuck in this void of nothing, feeling completely no emotion, feeling nothing. I feel dirty, like there is dirt inside my head, my mind. I'm always dizzy and confused. I feel no self-worth. I am intelligent, but I feel the opposite. I say things I don't mean. The last holiday in my house, the house I grew up in, the house I once contributed to, the house I once felt at home in, is past. As I hug my family, I look into their faces. I see nothing. It is like I'm looking at a video game, but less. I feel less than mentally damaged. It is like I have severe brain damage. I'm stuck in the depths of my mind where I have to constantly battle my demons. Am I here or am I fake? I feel myself slipping away. I hear screams faintly, but I constantly battle away from it. What if I let go? Where would I be? Would I ever come back to reality? I try to remember where I originated from, but I can't. I barely remember my childhood. I often fear being 80 years old, alone, and having faint memories of my parents, everything I missed out on. I think about my father, what a good man he is, and how I treat him like dirt because I have this condition and I can't take it. I might spiral out of control and lose myself in the void. I can't let it all go. All of these regrets I predict for my future self, all of these thoughts of remorse, I got this when I was in my stage of discovery. Now I look in the mirror and I see this sickly, tired, useless and stupid man in the mirror. He is a complete disgrace. He doesn't even deserve to live. I remember when I was 15, I would wander alone at 2 a.m. Everything was so generic. Nowhere felt like home. I saw things that were not there, a different reality. I felt eerie and alone. I died during those nights. I felt like a criminal. Where was my record? I can't talk without flinching now. I used to be this healthy blonde-haired boy with blue eyes, and in a few years I have darker hair and darker eyes. Half the body weight. Where did I leave off? I tried to sleep, I tried to clear my head, but the pressure won't go away and the pain and depression won't leave. Being me is this horrible disease I was given. I think of this and I succumb to sleep, but I see a large intensity of black, yellow, white fuzz. It makes my mind fizzle and I can barely keep in the bounds of reality. It is as if the ringing in my ears and the fuzz in my vision is simply all of the demons in my head mocking me. I fall asleep, but I wake up quickly to bloody screams. Is any of this here? Am I brain damaged? No. Then why am I like this? And this is just one of several posts. And I listen to these words, even as I read it back, and I remember and I reminisce on conversations I would have with my mum. And some of what Bryan speaks of in these words are no different than the conversations that were had with my mum. Now, I'm not saying that this is what was going on in Bryan's head, I'm not. But whoever wrote these was either suffering or had a very good knowledge about how someone who suffers in this way feels and managed to capture that almost perfectly. Now, all of this does not excuse what happened to these 4 victims. It doesn't. You know, at the end of the day, 4 young adults lost their lives. And these 4 all had futures ahead of them that were bright. They would have touched people's lives themselves and I'm sure done good things. They could have gone on to have children themselves, they would then have their children and so on and so forth. And in this act, all of that was ended, like the full stop of a sentence. But we as a world must do better. And whether you want to be one of these people who want to categorize things simply and label things as a monster and just think this person did this and because they did this, this needs to happen, or those who are open to understand that there are complexities and we as a whole, we need to look at these complexities, we need to accept them, we have to do better to understand and help. Or this is what we're going to see. We're going to see more situations where people explode. They get to a breaking point. Was Bryan Kohberger a ticking time bomb? And again, I say this, taking into consideration he is the only suspect in this case. and thinking if he indeed did do this. And that is for the system to prove. Was he a ticking time bomb? I saw some posts yesterday and it was like, well, if he felt that way, then he should have just done it to himself. But I'm going to leave you with this. The way we interpret the world, the way we accept information and what controls every single thing about our life is our mind, is our brain. Could you imagine if the very thing that controls every single thing about your life, how you love, how you hate, how you feel, that system turns against you? It actively works to destroy you, to make you scared of everything, to make you not understand where you are, those around you. And you may be thinking, as you watch this video, you don't know what you're talking about. But trust me, I do, and I watched it happen. And I dealt with the consequences. I'll catch you all in the next one.